Okay, hi everybody. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I hope your evening is going well. I think that we should give more people time to join, maybe like 3 minutes. So we start at 5 minutes past 5.
Okay, that's fine. But that's fine. So if you have questions, you can still just ask, raise your hand, and then ask your questions before we kick off. You know, so 2 minutes to do that.
Okay, I think we should just start. Let me share my screen. All right, can everybody see my screen? This one that I will quiet today. What's going on? Can anybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Chidera Okimizem. I will be taking you on Introduction to User Interface Design. So we're going into the design proper. We're kind of leaving the theories now. So you should be excited. But before we do that, we'll go into user stories, which is like a follow-up from your last class, where you learned about information architecture, you learned about user flow, you learned about user journey, and how to do that diagram on Miro or FigJam, anyone that appeals to you. So when we do that, we'll go into principles of design, and then we'll look at UI design patterns. So before I start, I would like to just mention that going forward, we'll be using KodeCamp website as like a case study. So everything we're doing now, even the design will start showing you the examples we're giving. It will be centered kind of around CodeCamp's website. Why we're doing this is so you can pay attention, you can follow, the structuring of the design when we finally do the design. So you can use that as like a North Star, as a guideline to creating your own final project. Because, yeah, you have to work on your own project. So we'll use the CodeCamp's website as like a case study. So just pay attention, just follow. So it makes your own work easy at the end of this program. All right, enough said. Let's start. So user stories. User stories are fictional one-sentence stories that describe a product's features from the perspective of the end user, connects the needs of a potential user to a specific action and benefit. Okay, so you remember we've learned empathy map, we've learned personas, we've learned information architecture. So we know how a user begins their journey. We know how to map that entire flow. How to say, okay, user logs in and he goes to the main app, goes to explore, goes to settings, right? We know how to do all those things. But here is the thing. What is their story? We have the persona, and the persona only tells us who the person is, right? It tells us the goal of the user, the motivations, and then the pain points or the frustrations of the user. But it doesn't tell us the story. Like, it doesn't tell us the feature that we need to design for the user. It doesn't tell us the value our design will bring to the user, right? So that is kind of what a user story will do for you. The purpose of the user story is just to tell us how any feature we design will bring value to our user. Okay. We can also call user stories use cases or scenarios. So think about it like this. When you hear user story, just be thinking of value and be thinking of feature. If you're doing a deep dive into user story, it can help you decide which features to build. Let's say you want to build a banking app, for example. How will you know the features to build? Have you ever sat and just thought about, like, how did they know that they should add mobile top-up in the banking app? How do they know they should add dollar transfer in the banking app? So how they come up with features is by studying user stories or by studying use cases, right? Right. So let's see. With user stories, we get to see how the value of our designs will bring to the product, how it comes about. And then we also get to see how the user interacts with our product outside their natural space. I know this sounds like a lot. So I'm going to calm down and we'll just see how we can craft the user stories. Again, we already know about persona, so I'm not going to go into it. But this is like a very clear-cut formula. The persona plus the action plus the benefits will give you your user story. And the only way, one of the easiest ways to represent this is, we said it's a one-line sentence or a simple sentence. So the sentence usually goes like this: as a persona, I want to carry out an action so that I can get a benefit. Okay, as a persona, I want to carry out an action so I can get a benefit. But let's break it down. What is the action? What is the benefit? I'm not going into personas because we've already learned that before. So for the action is what the user wants to achieve. Like, what is their intention? What are they hoping would happen? What are they looking forward to? That's the action. The benefit is why the user wants the action to happen. Like, if that thing they are hoping to happen happens, what would they gain from it? That's the benefit. Okay, it's that simple. So we put these three together and it gives us a simple user story. Again, a story is supposed to be like a paragraph or an entire essay, but in design, a story is just one line, like just one sentence. And it's very simple for anybody to understand. So let's see some examples. So, I said we'll be using KodeCamp's website as an example throughout the project. So that's our first example. As a design student, I want to know the experience of previous KodeCamp students so I can decide if I want to enroll in the next KodeCamp cohort. This is a user story. It's one sentence, and it's telling us the persona. Persona is a design student. Their action is they want to know the experience of previous KodeCamp students. Why? What would they gain from it? It will help them to decide if they want to enroll in the next KodeCamp cohort. Now think about this thing like this. I said, once you hear user stories, start thinking of features, start thinking of value. If you look at this sentence and relate it to KodeCamp's website, what feature are we going to add that will help the user achieve this story? I have the answer, but I need someone to really think smartly about this. Think about a feature. What can we add to CodeCamp's website that can help a student to know the experience of other students, and then to now help them to decide if they want to enroll? Yeah, Olamide, show your hand first.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think we can add the reviews of past students.
Thank you. Who else? Benedicta.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, everyone. I think we can add testimonies from previous CodeCamp students.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have a different feature for this particular one? One more.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I think maybe there can be a section to say my CodeCamp experience or something.
All right. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, these are all correct. What I even had in mind was just testimonials, but a review section will do just fine. And the CodeCamp experience answer to it is perfectly correct. See, it's very easy. So when you're just looking at user stories, start thinking of features. Just start thinking of features. What can we add to help the user, to help the user achieve their story? Let's look at the other one. As a manager, I want to be able to understand my colleagues' progress so I can better report successes and failures. If I'm looking at this now, I'm thinking of a productivity feature. I'm thinking of something I can build, right? That will help this manager to track his colleagues' progress. Another feature I can add is a feature that reports the colleagues' progress at the end of the month. So their successes, their failures, everything that they did within a particular period of time. It might be monthly, it might be annually, however. But I'm looking at this right now and I'm just thinking of productivity. Okay, so that's just how we can drag out features from user stories. So remember that our assignment about Michaela in order to hire a dog walker, right? So this is it. As a frequent traveler, I want to hire a dog walker so I can keep my dog happy and feel confident about its safety while I'm on vacation. So who will tell me what feature? We're building an app, right, for dog hiring, for dog walker hiring. So what feature can we add to help Makila? She wants to hire a dog walker, so she can keep her dog happy, and then she'll be confident wherever she is that her dog is safe. So what feature can we add to that app? Fumilayo, please go ahead.
Hello.
I don't know if it's possible, but I'm thinking like a tracker, like a map that shows where they are. Something like a map that just maybe like some dots on the map that shows like their location and all of that.
Thank you. That's a top-notch answer. You know why? You know how we can share our location on WhatsApp? Like if you are going to meet someone somewhere and the person needed to know exactly where you are and how you're moving, you can do that. You can share your location. So that's a very, very top-notch answer. Thank you. Does anybody have any other feature they might introduce? None? Okay. One other feature that we can add is, so you want to feel confident about the dog safety. If you don't trust the dog walker, there's no way you will even give them your dog in the first place and travel, right? So we can add a feature that shows verified dog walkers, just like Instagram or Twitter. When you see a verified person, the person is maybe famous or has influence. What is our brand influencers? Instagram influencers, yeah. So maybe we can add that feature where people that people already trust. Okay, that's just off the top of my head. All right, I think that will be all for user stories. Let's go straight into principles of design. At this point, we've assumed that you all have the data you need to design, as in you're ready. You want to open Figma and start designing. You have your map, you have all your research, you've done your user flow, you even built your user stories, you've listed out all the features you want to add, right? Normally, the next thing will be to just open Figma and start drawing wireframe, right? I mean, I've seen most of you rush to Figma and you were trying your hands out on different kinds of design and asking for feedback. It's cute, like it's very encouraging. I really like your energy around learning. But I'll say that if you notice, if you check your feedback, it's just a whole lot. It's all over the place. It's almost like your design is fine, but someone start telling you, but your alignment for this, for your color, shift this one to the left, do this, to that. So there's a way you can minimize all this feedback. So you're only getting constructive feedback for your design, not for simple things like alignments or the fact that your colors are not blending. Okay, so that way is what we call principles of design. You need to follow these principles. It's going to form the basis of everything you want to do. UI design, UI UX, UX design, graphic design, there are principles, just as with every other thing. If you're a science student, you know that there are principles. There are many laws. It's the same thing in design. So we're going to do a deep dive into principles of design. So design principles are widely applicable guidelines, biases, and design considerations that designers apply with discretion. Again, apply with discretion because you will not carry all the principles. See, there are over 250 design principles. You cannot carry all the principles, maybe because you spend time to learn it and then you want to fix everything or fit everything into a single design. It's going to look messed up. Okay, so in as much as you learn these principles, you are supposed to apply discretion. Just use your sense, basically. Okay, so these principles work together to create visually appealing and functional designs that make sense to users. That's just it. When I started designing, I used to look at all this and like, how did they think about these things? It didn't even occur to me that there are probably guidelines, and I'm pretty sure most of you haven't thought about it like that too. I remember one question someone asked, and he was like, he's trying to replicate the design, but he will end up doing exactly what the person does. And a mentor replied him and said, you need to understand the concept around the person's own design, and then you understand what you want to do. So it will help you to just follow that concept, but not following the exact design that the person is doing. So I would say if you knew the principles of design, you can always look at somebody's work, but you will come up with your own, and it will be unique. It will just be your own design. I remember the mentor saying she tries to add a little bit of herself in her design. Here's the thing. Before you can do that, before you start adding a feature to your design, you have to do the basics first. If it's a grid, if it's alignment, you have to do all those ones first. When your design looks balanced, it looks like a proper design, then you can then spice it up. Basically, what I'm saying here is you need to learn the principles of design before you rush to Figma and start designing. Okay, so these are fundamental pieces of advice. It's not a must. It's not do or die. These rules are not cast in stone. It's not the 10, what do we call 10 commandments, right? It's not, but it's just something for you to follow to help you improve your design. All right. So, you know, I said there are 250, and I don't think anybody has that strength to go and cram 250 designs. But what we've seen over time is that we can merge a lot of these, all those 250 principles into 12 basic principles of design, you know. So that's what we're looking at. We have contrast, we have balance, emphasis, proportion, hierarchy, repetition, rhythm, pattern, white space, movement, variety, and unity. To a large extent, combining these 12 principles of design in equal proportion helps your design to just look perfect. I know there's nothing close to that, there's nothing like perfect, but you know how you just look at a design and you cannot think of anything that's wrong with it. If you combine these 12 principles very well, it will give you something like that. Guaranteed. Like even if you don't know design before, just learning these principles, learning and practicing how to apply them to give you something close to a good design. Again, practice. You just have to practice. It's not enough to, you know, just start reading them. Start reading them, you have to practice them. So let's look at each of them. Start with contrast. So contrast refers to how different elements are mixed in the design, especially adjacent elements. The differences make various elements stand out. Okay, see, you know when clients, or you just hear people say, the design did not pop, or clients say, you're not feeling it, make the design pop. Most times, what they are saying is your design does not have enough contrast. Contrast is also important in this day and time because we are really into accessibility, you know, designing for people that are disabled, people that have visual impairments, you know, different kinds of disabilities really. So you need your design to match all the accessibility ratios that we have. So I think I wanted to point that I just felt okay, it's a little too extreme. It was a design that someone posted, you know, and wanted feedback. And I think it was what Amara, one of the mentors, she told I wouldn't have difficulty reading this example. My internet is unstable. Can anybody hear me? Are we good?
Yeah, we lost you for a bit,
Hello?
but we can hear you now. Yes, I can hear you. We lost you for a
Okay, I
bit, but
won't
we
say
can hear
anything
you.
until someone tells me they can hear me. Can anybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can
Yes,
hear you.
we can hear you now.
Can hear you.
Okay, so it seems the trainer is having a bit of network issues. So I'll just step in here. So if you have questions, you know, based on what she has said, you can just raise your hand, ask a question, and then we'll work that out. So if you have a question, okay, so Fumilayo, go ahead.
Okay, so my question is, I know that we've done research, we've done persona, and from your interviews, from your interview answers, you get your persona. So, like, where do you get your user story from? Is it from the persona you now get your user story? Like in my head, just to make everything clear. Like the other time that we had to do the persona, from the interview questions and the answer from the transcript, it was very easy to get the persona. So now for the user story, is it from that same interview answers that you get your user story?
Okay, yes, you can actually get your user story from a combination of everything, your persona and your research questions and the whole of that, because at that point, it gives you an idea of the problem you're trying to solve. Okay, the problem that this user is actually currently having. Okay, now the truth is, when you actually start working in a formal, when you start working formally, your clients actually can give you these user stories. Okay, but some of these things are easy for you. You can actually just get it by doing your research. Like for example, of course, when we're talking about websites and everything, now based on the design, based on the research rather that you have done, okay, you can actually just tell that, well, we need one of these user stories for someone to be able to come onto the platform, okay, see, just like the example she gave, see, success stories, okay, and get to what, apply for the next cohort. So that gives you an idea that, okay, I think one of the user story, this is just a user story. Then secondly, someone who is having maybe through your persona, you see that the person is having issues with probably having a lot of resources. Maybe that's one of the issue. So a user story could be that, okay, I want to be able to, get to a platform where I'll be able to see a pathway that will lead me from, okay, fine, if I want to be a UI UX designer, this is where I start, this is where I stop. So that gives you an idea of writing a user story based on the fact that you have seen that one of the pain points from your persona and all your research is that people don't have access to the right resources. Okay, so it can be gotten from a combination from your research, and at the same time, if you're working for a client, of course, clients can also give you user stories. But the user stories is actually based on what they want to achieve when they actually do a particular action. Okay, so I think that's that. I believe your trainer is back on the call. Chidera.
Yeah.
You
Okay, thank you. Sorry guys. So remember when we were talking about pain points, and someone said they were trying to log into the class, and Glow was just messing with them. Today I'm using Glow, so you see, they're the ones that logged me out. But let's continue. So someone should just tell me where I stopped or where you stopped hearing me. So I'll just pick up from there. I assume you can see my screen, right?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, so what was the last thing you guys heard? So I can take it from there.
Okay, someone said Amara's feedback, right? Amara's feedback.
Oh, that's much behind. Okay, all right, fine. So yeah, she was telling that person that your colors are not working. So the person did a redesign and posted it again. And then she now said, change your background color. That's what's not working. Okay, so if you had this knowledge of contrast, you would know that if you had applied contrast, I will not be telling you to change your background design. You will just look at the design and know that it's that background that is not working. Not that your design is not fine or that it doesn't make sense, right? It's just that the background is not working. It's not allowing other elements to stand out. That's it. See the sentence. The differences make various elements to stand out. If I use let's see, if I use gray instead of yellow here, we will sweat before we read anything on this Parabola's website. Okay, so they use yellow purposefully so that you can read everything that they have to write clearly. So that's what contrast does for you. If you're using, I don't use Adobe, so I can't speak to that. But if you're using Figma, it's very easy. We have plugins. There are three very popular ones. We have A11Y, we have Able, and we have Colorblind. Basically, what they do is you select your frame, you open the plugin, and then you run it. It will show you the places where your design needs more contrast or less contrast. Basically, A11Y is accessibility. So 11 is all the spellings between A and Y. in accessibility. But this is the one I use. It's very good. So it has like is it bar ranges where as you move it from one end to the other, you'll be seeing the color change in your own design. So you now pick something that is favorable. But basically, instead of you to start, bugging your head about contrast, just use plugins and get it over with. I believe that's clear. We'll move on to the next one, balance. So every element in a design, your typography, your color, the image, the shape, everything you put in your design, they have weights. It's called visual weight. They carry visual weight. So the way these elements are laid out on a page should now create a feeling of balance. Even without being designers, like anybody can just look at a designer and they'll be like, balance. Do you get it? It's a visual thing. So what you want to do as a designer is to make sure that everything on your website or your design is balanced. Some elements are heavy and they will draw the eye, while others are lighter and people might not even care about them. So your trick to achieving balance is to lay it out properly. Look at this example. They have this big image on this side, and then they have this writing. It's small, but I don't know. I can't see any other way to put it to maintain balance. Like it just works. So that's what you try to do. Just make sure that anyhow you arrange your designs, your elements, it should just look balanced. Imagine this text now was up here, and then this image was filling the entire bottom. So what do we do with all the space we have here? There's no balance. So basically, you just move things around. See, when you start practicing it, it gets easy. When you practice it with this knowledge, it gets easy. You just start seeing by yourself. That's another thing. It's called training your design eye. Just practice, move it around, see how it feels in your eye. You can even leave it and come back to it. Some things will now make more sense to you. For balance, just make sure that you're laying out your elements, however big or small, in a way that it appears balanced to the eyes. I believe that is clear. Anyone that is not clear, just call me back in the chat and I'll happily go back to it. So we have 12 to get to, so I have to keep moving. Emphasis, the third one. So emphasis deals with the parts of a design that are meant to stand out. It is used to convey the most important information. This one goes without saying, really. If I'm looking at this example now, the only thing that is, I'm not even seeing the faces because that's not what they want me to see. They want me to see, build something. Even this part, digital strategy, design, I'm straining my eyes to see it. Well, this build something, that is where they have laid emphasis on. Do you understand? Basically, like there's no too much talk around emphasis. If you want to emphasize something, just make it the most prominent, just make it conspicuous on the website or in the design, wherever, whatever kind of design it is, just make it huge. If I was going to design KodeCamp's website for learning, for example, I can say, okay, let's say it's for UI UX. I can say, become a UI UX designer in 6 months. Immediately you land on KodeCamp's website. That's what grab anybody's attention. Do you understand? That's where they've laid emphasis. Like, that is what they want you to see. That's the most important information KodeCamp's website is trying to convey, if that was the case. Okay, so just use, we're getting to that, but another way to lay emphasis is to use hierarchy, arranging things in like with a sense of priority. Obviously, build something is bigger than all these other ones, all these ones, all these ones. So you can use hierarchy to lay emphasis. Or if we're talking about emphasis as a standalone principle, it just means trying to convey the most important information in whatever way possible. All right, moving on. Proportion. This is the visual size and weight of elements in a composition and how they relate to each other. It clearly shows what's important and what isn't. In simple terms, proportion is the the size of the elements in relation to each other. We have 5 elements. How are they related to each other? Like how are we scaling them? If I'm saying scaling, I'm referring to their size, right? So I can make one very big because that's where I want you to, that's what I want to grab your attention. Then I can make every other one small. If all your elements are well sized and properly placed, then they are likely well proportioned. So it's about sizing them and placing them properly. Another thing to bear in mind when you're thinking about proportion is if you master balance, if you master contrast, if you master alignment, you will likely get proportion. Like proportion will just come naturally. If you align them well, you balance it, and there's contrast, proportion will just come. You get, so it's not like you have to, it's not an end goal. Some of, in fact, all of them, all these 12 principles, they are interrelated, they work together. By the time you're doing 1, 2, 3, 4 will start coming out by itself. 5 might start appearing by itself. That's kind of how this works, right? But if you're thinking about proportion on its own, you're thinking of size, you're thinking of how they are placed, how they relate to each other in a design. Let's look at our example. This is from a book, I believe, The Fisherman, right? In as much as the name is The Fisherman, they are drawing.
I wanted to share it for security. Cake. I brought it from home.
In as much as they're talking about a fisherman, their emphasis here is on the fish. So what they did is they made the fish bigger, they made the fisherman smaller. And then look at this. This is how they are relating to each other. Even if I don't see this name, the fisherman, if I'm looking at this design, I know that it has to do with fishes. Like that's the main thing. But if this fisherman was not there at all, there's no context. What is relating this fish now with this picture? It's the fisherman. But I don't want you to like focus on the fisherman himself. I want you to focus on the fish. But I'm using the hook line or whatever they call it in fishing terms. I'm using this to relate the two pictures together, despite their different sizes. I mean, you can go and read more rather on proportion. So that's kind of what it is. Again, one easy way to do proportion is just master alignment, master your contrast, master balance. Proportion will just start coming to just start showing. That's how it works. All right, moving on. Hierarchy. I already mentioned hierarchy when I was trying to talk about emphasis. But let's look at it. Is the laying out of content in a composition in order to effectively communicate information and then to convey meaning. It directly relates to how well people can process content. Yeah, if you don't even want to take anything out of hierarchy, just take this last one. It directly relates to how people can process content. If you pack everything together, I'm already going into the example. Look at this one. What do I want to get from this picture? There's Jane Smith, there's her website, there's the phone number, and there's the email address. But they are all like, there is no hierarchy. They are probably all the same color, same font weight. So nothing is speaking out to me. I'll spend, we don't see this, like it's not something you measure easily. But you will spend more time trying to decipher this information from this one. So like one way to achieve hierarchy is to use layout. Place the most important one at the top. Then you use size to make an important content large, or if it's not important, you reduce it. We're looking at this after picture now. Already, don't forget this picture, this one, is already, I mean the profile picture is of the passport. It's already a design element, right? So if I look at this first example, before the name, before anything, the picture will stand out to me. It's already in high hierarchy. sorry, it's already the first thing standing out to me. But obviously, that's not all the information that we want whoever is looking at this to get. We want them to also see the name. So what do? We increase the size and change the color. So it's just basically how do you want them to process information? I will get to, there's a principle called movement, I think. For if my eyes just land on this design, I'm looking at the picture first. Then I want to see one thing that stands out next before I then process further. So there's something called progressive disclosure, right? So you look at the first thing that jumps out to you, and then you start going like that and look at until you get to the smallest thing on that design. If you're thinking about that in this context, the first thing that jumps out to me, for some people it might be Jane Smith. It's very obvious, but to me, it's still the picture. It's still the face. Imagine she had like it's a real person's picture with eyes and nose and all those things. That's the first thing I'll see. Then the next thing I'll see is her name, right? So basically, that's kind of how you relate hierarchy in a design. The next design principle is repetition. Okay. Repetition is the reoccurrence or the recurrence of elements, color, shapes, or forms in design. The name is already as the name goes. Repeat design, just repeat it as a way to enforce brand. Okay, well, UI UX designers, right? But at some point you might have to dabble into a little bit of brand identity or graphic design. So yeah, repetition is like one of the main, like I said, the core design principle. If you're thinking about a brand, if you're thinking about identity, a brand's identity, it just gives your element a signature look. See, if all this, okay, look at this example. We have circles, and they are red or red and white. Imagine, look at, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but if we had a blue circle in this same design, I would think it's a mistake, or it should just stand out oddly to me. So when we say repetition unifies and strengthens your design, what we mean is it just puts it together. It just looks put together. And then if you're talking about repetition in a brand identity way, someone should just tell me, looking at this example, which brand do you think it's for? It looks like a banner, it looks like an advert, but I believe a brand is coming to mind. Just tell me. 1 or 2 persons.
Airtel.
Okay, that's one.
Sterling Bank.
What?
Coca-Cola.
Thank you. That's what I had in mind. Okay, yeah, those two are fine. So basically, we use it to convey a brand's identity. And they've done this so well that once you see it, your mind is going somewhere. It's telling you it's Airtel. It's telling you it's Coca-Cola. That's one of the things that applying principles of design would do for you. It will just strengthen your design, and anywhere they see that design, they want to associate it with a particular brand. Now, that's about brand identity or graphic design. If we're relating it to UI UX, on a website, if you notice, their nav bar, maybe it's blue. Their call to actions or their buttons might have the same blue. If you're scrolling down and you go to the footer, you see the same blue. That's repetition. And what they are doing is they are sending you that signal of brand identity. So blue here, blue here, blue here. To the end of the website, they're repeating that same color or a particular pattern. So it sticks. So it sends the message that this is our brand. If you open that website again, if you see another color, you might be confused. Like, am I in the right website? Okay, so that's basically what you use repetition to do. Moving on, we have rhythm next. Rhythm, the spaces between repeating elements. can cause a sense of rhythm to form. Another thing too, look at this. We repeated circles here, right? Can you see these spaces? That's just what rhythm is. When you repeat elements, the spaces within those elements, that's what rhythm is. It can create excitement, can create consistency, reassurance, like I said before. And then it all depends on the way they are implemented. In this example, follow I don't know if you can see this pointer, but just follow it. These spaces are rhythm. There are different kinds of rhythm. We have random, we have regular, we have alternating, we have flowing, and we have progressive. When you go back, to read up on this, you can go deep into it, right? Or if I would say there are two types of rhythm that I'm feeling here. They said it can create excitement or consistency. If I'm looking at these spaces, it's giving me a particular vibe. I said there are 5 types of rhythm. We have the random, we have regular, alternating, flowing, and progressive. So someone should look at this example and tell me just two types of rhythm that you're feeling from this design. Just two. I can go over the whole 5 again. Random, regular, alternating, flowing, and progressive. These spaces are definitely giving me a vibe. So just tell me how you think about them, what you think about them. Yeah, Oluwa Funbi. Sorry, I butchered your name. Go ahead.
Alternating.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, go.
Yeah, Victoria, go ahead.
Victoria.
Okay, so Okweli, Okweli, go ahead.
I think it's random.
What did you say?
I think it's random.
Thank you. So here's the funny thing. Aside regular and progressive, every other type of rhythm has actually been applied here. It's random. If you're looking at the shapes, there's really no, no cohesion. You cannot say it's going in a straight line or it's going in a parallel line, right? So random will work, alternating will work, and flowing. Just look at it. It looks like a river or something that can just flow through these spaces. So aside regular and aside progressive, every other type of rhythm will work. So yeah, again, this is just you trying to create something, in your design. Just use spaces and then make sure that they are creating a sense of rhythm. It's not a must. That's another thing. Before we start, when you finish your design, you now say your design does not have rhythm. No, it's not a must. If it doesn't look like there are spaces like this in your design, it's fine. As long as you're applying other principles of design, it's absolutely fine. You must not apply all 12 of them, in a particular design. All right, that's that on rhythm. Patterns. Patterns are like repetitions, first of all. Let's just get that out there. But it deals with mainly just the elements. If we're talking about repetition can be the shape, can be the form, it can be different ways that we can represent repetition. But if we're talking about pattern, it's a particular element, like just one part of it, not shape, not form. It can be just shapes, right? Or it can be just colors. It depends. But our definition says patterns are repetitions of multiple design elements that work together. It can also refer to a set of standards for how certain elements are designed. If time permits, we would do, because UI design patterns are a whole thing on their own, and it's something that is very, very important for us new designers. Okay, so we're thinking of patterns in two ways. First of all, as repetitions or as a set of standards for how elements should be designed. I mean, does anybody need like a a further explanation on how patterns work? Looking at this design, you can just tell it's following a particular pattern. We're repeating donuts, we're repeating cupcakes, and maybe croissants. I believe that's what it's called. And then this flowery thing. So just patterns. You know, is it dashiki? Those things, it was just, it's basically the patterns. They were just repeating those traditional, will I say, African kind of prints and patterns. That's just how, you know, dashiki is. So that's kind of how you can apply pattern. It's usually mostly in print, maybe in fashion, in maybe magazines or newspapers. But you can do them in your design. Really, really, really depends. All right. Yeah, I think that will be it for pattern. Okay, white space. As an advocate for minimalist or minimalism, this is like one of my favorites, like white space. I really, really like it. All right. White space is also referred to as negative space. It is the area of design that do not include any design element. And the thing is that white space is very, very tricky. It's funny. A design can be blank and just have, let's just say, ABC in one section, and the design will be fine. But it takes a lot of thinking, a lot of time for you to be okay with that kind of design. What we do as new designers is we just start packing things into our design. Put one here, put one here. You just want to fill the entire space with design. If you do it like that, your work will look messy. One thing that white space does for your design, it will allow you to breathe. Think about breathing. As long as we are breathing, you're living, you are alive. If you stop breathing, you are dead. So that's kind of how you want to think of white space. It gives all your elements space to breathe. I can't edit this now, but imagine I just jam-packed all these things together. It will be hard to read. But with white space, you see, all these elements of this particular slide, they are breathing. Like it looks very good, it looks balanced. So that's kind of what you can use white space to do. Okay. Another thing is that your white space is not just sitting there. Like it's not as if you just left white space for nothing. You should be using white space to send a particular message. That's why we're saying here that in some cases, negative space or white space is used to create secondary images that may not be immediately apparent to the viewer. Look at this example. Someone should look at it carefully. There's another image that this FedEx Corporation is sending. Like if you look carefully, just take two, or like take a second look. There's another image here. It's a writing. It's just FEDEX, right? And corporation. But I can pick out another element from this that means something to the brand. Yeah, Bamifemi.
Yeah, it has an arrow between E and X.
Thank you. Thank you. And you know that FedEx I think it's a delivery or a moving company or industry. They share and move things, right? They help you deliver something. So that arrow makes a lot of sense. Like it just makes sense that they have that arrow. To me, to signify movement. I did not Google this, but I also believe that's part of what they were trying to get with this negative space. So that's one very brilliant way that you can apply white space. You know, just use it to create very nice things like this. Okay. Yeah, one more thing I wanted to call out when it comes to white space. White space is not only white, like it doesn't necessarily have to be white. In that case, we can then comfortably refer to it as negative space. Okay. There are designs where I mean, if you start looking at portfolios, right? All these designers' portfolios, you will see someone's huge, maybe his big head, or just his portrait, his head down to his chest, and his name, and the background is black, and there's no other thing there. Well, it looks very fine. You'll be like, mad though, like this design looks mad. But there's nothing on it. It's just his name and just his picture. And the background is black. That's a very good use of white space. So I'm just trying to say that your white space does not necessarily need to be color white. It can be black. It can even be any other color, okay? But it just needs to create something like this. It just needs to create something like this. All right, so again, before we move on from this, as new designers, we'll be tempted a lot of times. Like you will just finish designing and you'll be like, this design looks empty. It's not empty. It's not empty. You just need to let it breathe, like just allow it. There are some people that will not even stop designing until they feel like they've added a lot of things into one particular design. These days, if you look at modern websites or trends, there's a lot of white space. There's just white everywhere and just like few elements to the left and to the right. Okay, so I mean, do your research, you will see that people are really, really applying white space, and I think you should. It's very dope, very, very dope. All right. Oh yeah, one more thing. The more space around the element, the more your eye will be drawn to it. I don't know how how best I can explain this one, but it's just something. If there's white everywhere, for example, let us say with all this writing, we don't have it here. We just have FedEx. Every other place is white. If you land on this design, you have no choice. It's FedEx that you look at. That's the only thing to look at. So I've used the white space to draw your attention to kind of like the only other visible element on the page. So yeah, that's another application of white space. Think about it like that. The more white space around an element, the more your eyes will be drawn to it. Oof, that's really enough said on white space. Let's move on. Movement. We move. Movement refers to the way the eye travels over design. Visual cues like images and lines can be used to direct movement. I won't say something, but I'll come back to it. Look at this design. For me, the way they slanted these things, that's how my eye is following it. That's one application of movement. 01, 02, 03. Even the way she said, my name is Abby, right? There's just only the italicizing of her numbers and her name makes me want to follow the design. Even the images, look at this. It's slanting, right? Same as this, same as this. So in movement, you kind of use your, visual cues to direct the user, okay, in the way you want them to read your website, to read your design, or to just view your design, okay? There's this rule. Usually we view things from the top first, and then we go downwards and just follow kind of like the important elements. If I'm viewing this example, I may look at home, portfolio, about, and contact, because the first thing is just up there. So my eye will travel like this. From here, I'll come down, 01, because of the way she has arranged this. If she had put 01, 02, trust me, I'll follow it like that. But because of the way she has arranged it, I'm going to follow it like that. Subconsciously. Okay, so in design, these are the things you want to take note of. And you know, some people say good designs are not noticeable, but they actually do the work. So subconsciously, this is how you will follow it. If it was arranged downwards, you will follow it downwards. So for me, I'm just going to go 01, 02, 03. And again, she has mixed movements with hierarchy. This one, my name is Abby, is obviously bigger than all these things she has written about herself. So if I go 01, 02, 03, I'm going to come down like this, right? Because that's what's catching my eye. So that's how you kind of direct movement. Now, if you are following my cursor, I don't know if you can see it, but I went like this, I came here, I went like this, I came here, and I went like this. Did anybody see a pattern? Tell me, did anybody see a pattern? I went like this, like this, like this, like this, and like this. Did anybody see a pattern in the way I move? Nobody? Femi again.
Yes, it's from left to right, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, that's it. So when we read, it's kind of like a rule. When we read from left to right, or we read in a Z pattern. 1, 2, 3. That's how we read. So when you want to present information in your design, you kind of want to make sure that you're following, the reading patterns of human beings. Okay, so we're going left, right, back to left, and then to right. Okay, so I believe that's clear for movement. Let's move on. Variety. When they say variety is the spice of life, that is the same thing in design. This is where you will show yourself as a badass designer, right? Well, before I get to that, variety is used to create visual interest. It is the use of several elements to create aesthetics. You can show variety through colors, shapes, images, however. Okay, so you don't want to show variety for the sake of it. You should do something. Sometimes when they tell you the design did not pop and you've gotten your contrast right, you've done alignment, there's balance, there is a rhythm, there's proportion, but something is missing, right? That's when you add variety. Like you just spice it up. That's basically, I can't even think of a better way to put it. Like variety is basically stuff you add to your design to jazz it up. Like, okay, oh, I'm bad like this. Oh, that's how you do variety. Just add anything. So if you're looking at this example, they can easily go with a picture. Just put a circle, put any picture they find online. But using colors and shapes, repetition and patterns in this place, it just gives the design a different look already. Okay, so when I come to this website, I'm already seeing it and it looks pretty cool. That's just what you use variety to do. Just spice your design, jazz it up, make it look fine. Yeah, that'll be that about variety. And the last one, unity. Unity is just like the name. Unity is like harmonizing your design. So everything that you have put in your design, from the shapes to the layout, the color, at the end of the day, they have to come together. Like your design just has to, it just have to work together. Like there should be a clear relationship between all your visual elements. To just make it make more sense. Okay, like look at this design. If it was blue here, yellow, red, white, you'd be like, what the hell is going on? Like, what is this designer thinking? Okay, but because they've used a particular color to harmonize their design, it makes more sense. Another thing, see, these are images. They could have decided to just leave the image without these are overlays. Like this particular blue covering they're called overlays. So they could have decided to just leave the images themselves. I mean, it will still make sense, but trust me, it's not make sense as much as it does now. Okay, so what you want to do is to make sure that all your design at the end of the day, everything that you've done, there's harmony between them. I already mentioned it here. If the elements in your design are not cohesive, if they're not compatible, your design instantly looks messy and unprofessional. It's not a must though. Like it's not must that if you have yellow, so everything on your design has to be yellow. No. But you would have to put yellow in some, if that's your brand color, right? If that's your brand color, you have to put yellow in certain places just to create that harmony, right? If I'm looking at a very long website, I landed on yellow at the beginning, midway through, I see some yellow. I'm going down again and I see blue. It's not like a shocker, right? But I'll be like, okay, what's going on? Because at that ending part, you've kind of removed the harmony, I was experiencing from the beginning of the design. So yeah, basically, Unity is just trying to harmonize your design, make it make sense, make everything look like one. Okay, that's that. Does anybody have any question? We still have UI design patterns to cover, but these are like number 1 to 12 of your design principles. So if you have questions, let me know before we move on. None? We're good? Okay. Since you don't have questions, I will ask you my own. Can someone name 12? Okay, let's just do 6. Off the top of your head, just tell me 6 design principles out of the 12 that we just went through. It's not that hard. No. Bami, thank you very much. You're my favorite student. Someone else should help us out.
Okay, Chimdima, go ahead.
Okay, we have contrast, redeem, variety, movement, white space, and pattern. And
Thank you.
repetition.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's move on. Final words on design principles. I said we have over 250. I'm not even capping. We actually have that much, right? But those 12 that we just went through, they are basic, are the basic ones. They're the ones you need to know. They're the ones you will live by, and then you can build on it to do any other kind of crazy design that you want to do. Other principles of design includes typography. Typography is a whole world on its own. You have color, you have grid, gestalt, alignment. It's a lot. So tax number 1, not like a real tax share, but just go back and okay, I even stated it here. So we have this book, The Pocket Universal Principles of Design. So this guy, William Lidwell, has kind of like summarized all those 250 principles. He reduced them to, I think, 150 and just made it easy to understand. So I think you should really get this book, or I'll send it in the resource channel, but you really need to read it to understand. Okay, so a design doesn't have to strictly follow these rules to be good. However, it is important to understand and practice these principles as beginners. I said it before. It's not a must. Like, if your design is lacking reading, it's fine. If it has like 2 to 3 of the other principles and it looks good and it works, then it's fine. It doesn't have to follow, all these principles for your design to be good. Let me even tell you, when you become like a master designer, you will break these rules. That's the truth. But it's not advisable for us that are beginners, for you that is learning. If you try to break rules that you've not even mastered, it's going to look messy. Like, there's no 2 ways about it. Okay, so only when you've mastered the principles of design, then you can then decide to break the rules. And your design will still look very, very cool. It will still look very wonderful. Okay, so that's just one thing I want us to really, really bear in mind. Before you come and start doing the one that is in your mind, try to, as much as possible, follow these principles. Okay. Moving on to the last part, which is UI design patterns. I said these patterns there are two types of it. The first one is the one we saw, I think that was number 6 or 7, can't remember. But that's the one we saw as part of the design principles. But this one I'm talking about, they're like, it's still guideline, right? They are sets of standards for how certain elements are or should be designed. These patterns helps to solve common problems in UI design, and it also helps us to avoid reinventing the wheel. I'm going to break this down. Have you ever noticed that most products are similar? Like it's as if nowadays everybody's copying each other. If you open a website, the first thing you see is a nav bar, home, about, contact us, testimonial. And maybe on the left side, you now see their logo, right? And then on the far right, you can maybe see a button, sign up, join us, whatever. Almost every website has that thing. And then you'll be thinking, who is copying who? Nobody is copying each other. It's just that we have, as designers, we are following a particular pattern. Patterns have been proven to work. Like we know that these patterns helps a user's, let's say, mental model or retention. What I mean is this: imagine you now open your website, you do not see any nav bar, any top nav bar. You didn't see home, about us, contacts. You didn't even see the logo. You just see information. That's going to look weird to you. You know why? Because you are used to seeing top nav bar. You're used to seeing home, about us, and all those things on top as the first thing, right? So that's what UI design patterns are. They're just those standards that we use to create other designs. Let me give you another example. Mobile websites. If you're looking at a website on mobile, chances are that it has a hamburger menu. If we're using our mobile apps, we have, I think it's called bottom nav bar, where you have home, settings, profile. Instagram has it. It has camera, explore, right? So those things are things that we already know. Like if it's not there, we'll be concerned. We use patterns to create these mental models. If you're thinking of a login page, you know that once you're going to a login page, 2 fields must be there. They must ask you your username and your password. That's a design pattern. Do you understand? If we're using non-digital product examples, if I'm wearing a t-shirt that is blue, right? And it has big writing on it, and someone else is wearing the same t-shirt with like Ankara designs. If someone is looking at the two of us, they shall know that we're wearing a t-shirt. However, the t-shirt is designed, it's not much of a problem. But the mental model that's in that person's head is that we're both wearing t-shirts. Okay, so that's one way to think about design patterns. They're just those elements or those ways we've been using to design things over time that users are already used to. Okay, so when I say it helps us to avoid reinventing the wheel, what that means is before you go and start doing your own, you have to follow these design patterns so you don't confuse users or you don't drive them away from your site. You use what has already been used. Before you reinvent the wheel, you have to be like very good, like creative director, senior UX designer. Do you understand? Before you start breaking things or putting things at the side. I think I want to show you something. Where is she? Look at this. Can you see this? So Anika Izora Castin is a creative director. She's famous in the design industry, right? Remember when I was saying when you land on the website, you will not see, you're supposed to see home, about us, the person's logo or the company's logo. There's nothing like that here. Instead, she puts maybe who she is, the things she does, or what she likes, right? And then this is where she now puts the nav bar, walk, about, shop, contact. See? So she's not a learner. Obviously, this is crazy. Like if I was a recruiter and I saw this portfolio, I'm already attracted. Like this looks very, very nice. But she has gotten to that stage where she understands the principles and she knows that even if she breaks one design pattern, there's another way for it to work. And that's what we're seeing here. She has somehow made it work. So that's what I'm saying, that before you start reinventing the wheel, you have to first of all follow these patterns, okay? All right, so how do we use UI design patterns? I wanted to also show you another thing. I think I should quickly. White space. It's not white, it's not even black. She used a gradient, that's what it's called. See, all this space. That's because the only thing she wants you to focus on is her name. Anika Hastings Izora. That's just what she wants you to see on this page. So she has used white space effectively. And because it's not white, it's better we refer to it as negative space, okay? Another example is this one. Look at how much white is here. Just look at. But it works. I think it works. This is Jan Ben's website. I think it works. So that's kind of how you can play around. By the time you start practicing, don't worry, you'll get used to all these things. But basically, this is how you can play around with white space. You know what he did here? After looking at this, I'm not even going to start reading all these things. This is what he wants you to focus on. And this is what he does: animation, illustration, and design. So you see, they've mastered these things and they are playing around it, to pass all the information that they want to pass. So that's that. All right, so how do we use UI design patterns? UI design patterns can be plugged directly into our interface. We need to tailor them to fit a particular scenario. You know what this reminds me of? The same guy that said, when he looks at someone's design and then he wants to replicate it and it ends up doing the exact same thing. You need to tailor your own. You will follow the same pattern, but you need to tailor it to fit what you want to do. If you're looking at, say you want to design a streaming service for NetNiger, right? You go and look at, what's the name? Netflix. You'll see how they've designed their own, but you will not copy them. What you will copy is their design pattern, okay? And then you now tailor it to what you want to achieve in NetNiger. Okay, so how do you do that? You start off by defining the problem you're tackling. Okay, then with a clear problem in mind, you can then head over to your favorite UI design pattern library. You click on the category that best fits your need, and then you read about it and you implement it. I don't know if that is clear. But go over it again. Basically, you tell yourself, what do I want to achieve, right? Now that you have that clear problem in mind, you then go to your design library. We're getting to this one. Now, this is where things get easy for you. You just go to your library and then you pick out any category that you like. All right, UI design pattern libraries. We have mobbing, UI garage, UI patterns, and then we have patterns. Well, I shall know this is patterns. So these places and where I think I just need to go to it. UI patterns. This is the one I recommend, by the way. I would pack all these things. I'll find a way to send them in the resource channel because it's a lot, I know. Okay, so let's say you want to start, and if you want to start your mobile app, right? You will start with input, login, register, and you probably don't know like how best to go about it. What you will do is you come to UI patterns, okay, and you look for the pattern that fits you. For me, it's login, so I'll click on it. Getting input. Come on, okay. So this library is going to tell me how to get input, how to get the user to input data. Okay, that's just what we want. We want to learn how they can get input. I don't know why this website looks like this, considering that it's a very important tool. It should look better. Anybody can take this up as a personal project, and redesign it. That's just by the way. Okay, so again, I was saying I wanted to look for how to design login pages or registration pages. So I'm going to look here. Password strength, good default, calendar picker, anything you want to add in your design, just come here and look for it. You'll surely find something, okay? Let me look for what? Password strength, good default. Okay, input prompts. I've clicked on it. So basically, you just have to read through this and understand how you're supposed to create forms, create input. Okay, so they're telling you here that an input field is prefilled. An input field is prefilled with example text or a question that prompts the user with what to do or what to type. See, it's a lot of reading, but that's one thing nobody tells you in design. You have to read a lot because before me, I was wondering, like, is it that you just open Figma, right? And then it just comes to you and you start designing. No, they've picked all these cues from the principles down to the patterns. They've learned all these things, they've read about it, and then they will start implementing it in their designs. Okay, so come on. Okay. So there are 4 main ones, but for you, I would advise that you use UI patterns. Okay, just go to UI patterns, search for any type of thing you're looking for. If you're looking for how to design a footer for your website, just go there, go to UI patterns, search for footer, and they'll tell you how you should arrange all the elements in your footer. And then go to Figma, and then you can try it. I think that we have a lot to digest this week. I know this has been a lot. Okay, so just go back and read through. I'll be linking a lot of resources about all these things, maybe before the end of the day. So you just need to go back, take your time and read through. And that will bring us to the end of our class. If you have questions, I'm open to answer.
Okay, yes. So let's entertain questions. So there, I'm just going to read one that's already on the chat. Okay, so she said, that's Faith Okon. She says, you talked about movement as a design principle. Say that the basic way of reading or movement of the eye is left to right. But for the Arabs, they read from right to left. How can this be achieved in case we get a gig? So that's from Faith.
Okay, thank you. That's what the way you guys think. That's very, very smart. So what we might want to do, I think I should go back. Movement. Okay. So that brings up the case of accessibility in design. That's another rabbit hole on its own. Okay. Well, if you are designing for, you already said it. They read from, I think that they read the other way around, from right to left. And that's also how their writings are placed, I believe. If you are designing for an Arab-specific website, you would follow their own pattern. There is no need stressing anybody to do in English. But what I've also noticed with some sites is that it creates the ability for you to translate. Okay, so if I was in that situation, I would design for Arabs in mind. But I'll also put an option to translate. So this is where you have to work with your dev, your developer. Okay, that once you're on this platform, you can choose how best you want to view it. But because you have a target user in mind, it's better to present it in the default way that they want to view it. For Arabs, just do it the way they normally do it, just for comfort's sake, and then put the options for them to view it in any other language, right? Yeah, or any other format. If you buy a new phone, it's the same thing. The first thing that will pop up to you is select your language. That's kind of what it is. If you select French, even your keyboard will change to French. Everything on your phone will appear the way French people interact, like the way they read with all their accents, all those marks. If you choose Yoruba, the same thing, all those marks that we put on our letters is the exact same thing. So yeah, to your question, design for your target user and then give them other options. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so do we have any other question? Just signify with a raise of hand. Okay, so to Victoria, yes, the class is recorded, so you can get it on the YouTube channel, KodeCamp team. Go to our YouTube channel, then you'll be able to find it in the playlist. There's a UI UX playlist. Every UI UX class that have been recorded, they're all there, so you can find it on YouTube. Okay, so do we have any other question? Okay, so in the absence of none, should there have permission to end the class?
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to address one thing. I think Victoria said there's a lot spoken about, but not documented on the slide. So what I would do, I agree, and this is a lot. I'm not even lying. So what I'm going to do is I would maybe a Google Drive. I'm not sure yet, but I'll pack all these resources for you: the books, the YouTube videos, the articles, the blogs. I'll pack all of them for you. And I'm pleading with you. It might appear too much, but you really, really need to take your time to study all of them. Let me just tell you now, your task will probably be the subject to change, but your task will probably be to identify most of these design patterns. So maybe you might be seeing a website, you might be seeing a design, a screenshot, and I'll be asking you to identify each of these patterns and maybe telling me why you think this one is a white space or why you think this one is a, okay? So the onus is on you to go back and really, really learn about these principles. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Once again, Chidera, for the class, it has been really educative. Okay, someone said, Victoria, you have a question. Okay, go ahead. Victoria, you said you have a question. Okay. Okay, so you have 1 minute to do that before we round up. Okay, so I think probably you just ask your question on the UI UX channel on Slack, and then you get the answer you actually need. Or basically, you can actually use the Ask a Mentor channel. Okay, so we can actually just round up. Okay, so thank you very much, Chidera, once again. Thank you everyone for making yourself available for the class. So look out for informations that will be dropped on the Slack channel, and do have a wonderful night. Thank you very much.